The British Grand Prix. Wow. Simply wow. That race was an absolute rollercoaster of emotions, and one that will be talked about for a very long time. There's a lot for us to delve into, so without wasting any time, here are the winners and losers of the British Grand Prix. Winner, Lewis Hamilton. The last time Hamilton won a race was over 2 months ago at the Spanish Grand Prix. Considering how dominant he and Mercedes have been over the past few years, that's pretty much an eternity. Now, most people are here to talk about that incident. So what I'm going to do is give my take on what happened from Lewis's perspective, and then give my take on what happened from Max's perspective. For me, I think Lewis needed to try something different to be able to win this race. We saw in sprints qualifying that both drivers were going all guns blazing on lap 1, with some spectacular wheel-to-wheel action. Max defended brilliantly and from there went on to qualify on pole. The last opportunity for Lewis to overtake was around the outside at Copse, which, as expected, didn't work. So this time around, as he was getting a tow down the old start-finish straight, he went for a move down the inside by dummying to the left and then switching to the right. He does eventually get alongside, but given his trajectory going into the corner and the fact that he's got a full tank of fuel, he understeers into Verstappen's right rear tyre. Now, I think Lewis could have done more to avoid the collision by backing off, but that simply wasn't an option. He needed to get past if he was going to have any chance of taking the victory. But unfortunately, it ended in Max having a 51G crash, which I am so grateful he walked away from. If you haven't listened to this, here's Max's team radio after the impact.
Max, you okay?
And for the record, for those who try to insinuate that Hamilton did it intentionally, you couldn't be further off the mark. These are two of the most hard-headed and aggressive drivers on the grid, who were simply unwilling to give the other an inch. They were simply racing. End of. There is nothing more to it. Look, everyone is going to have their own opinion on it, but at the end of the day, these things happen. Regardless, Hamilton regrouped after serving his 10-second penalty and came back to win the race with 2 moves that were performed at the same corner. It was a fantastic recovery drive that deserves to be acknowledged as such, despite the incident with Max. An 8th British Grand Prix win puts him just 8 points behind the Dutchman in the Drivers' Championship as we approach the midway stage. Losers, Red Bull. This is continuing on from the last segment covering Lewis, and so I want to get into what happened from Max's point of view. In my opinion, I think he expected Hamilton to back out, like in previous races. For example, in Imola and more so Barcelona at the start of the Grand Prix. He initially sees Lewis arriving alongside and makes a small adjustment. But then, since he has more grip on the outside, the Brit goes out of his field of vision, and he decides to hold the racing line, not realizing that Hamilton is still there. Again, like his rival, he could have done more to avoid the collision, considering he could have used the runoff area like Charles did when racing Lewis later on in the race. But then, you're basically yielding to position at that point, and Max wasn't prepared to do that. So he assumed the space was there, but evidently it was closer than he thought. Now thankfully, he's walked away from the incident pretty unscathed. But that team radio I played earlier sounded pretty damn scary, and it could have been a lot worse. Which once again goes to show how far safety has come in Formula 1. Verstappen made some comments on social media after the race, stating, "Glad I'm okay. Very disappointed with being taken out like this. The penalty given doesn't help us and doesn't do justice to the dangerous move Lewis made on track. Watching the celebrations while still in hospital is disrespectful and unsportsmanlike behavior, but we move on." I mean, look, I get it. You're frustrated at the outcome. You've just lost 25 points because of a dangerous crash that put you in hospital. But what's Lewis supposed to do? Not celebrate winning his home Grand Prix in front of 140,000 people, most of which have come to see him do exactly that. He didn't even know you were in hospital until he got to the post-race interviews. In my opinion, this is going to be a defining moment in the championship. Not in terms of who comes out on top, but in terms of how Verstappen responds. He could either use this as positive fuel going into the upcoming races, Or he could get angry and start trying to get revenge. And history has shown that an angry Max is not a fast Max. Over the past few years, he has learned to become more controlled and mature in his approach, which has helped him elevate to Hamilton's level. He shouldn't lose that now he's had an incident with him, but his post on social media suggests he may act differently when racing Lewis in the future. What's for sure though is that Netflix are going to have an absolute field day with this race. Sergio Perez also didn't have a great day at the office. During the sprint qualifying session, Checo spun at Chapel, leaving him to start from the pit lane on Sunday. In pursuit of the projected P4 finish Red Bull sets for him, he ended up colliding with Kimi Raikkonen, which was deemed a racing incident after the race. He was called in for soft tyres at the end to prevent Hamilton from getting an extra point for fastest lap, but he only managed to finish ahead of the two Haas drivers. Red Bull leave the weekend with no points in the Constructors' Championship, and their advantage has consequently been reduced to just 4 points. They'll be looking for a strong weekend next time out in Hungary to get their own back before the summer break. Winner, Charles Leclerc. What could have been, am I right? Leclerc could have taken Ferrari's first win since Singapore 2019. He kept his nose clean on lap 1 despite a few opportunities to jump Hamilton presenting themselves. Then once the race restarted, he managed everything brilliantly, including the engine issues reported on lap 16. It was gutting to see him lose the lead after leading every single lap up until the very end, but nevertheless, it was a phenomenal result. For me, Charles has been one of the more underappreciated drivers this season. He has scored the only 2 non-Mercedes or Red Bull poles and put in some absolutely fantastic race performances as well. I can't wait to see him in a championship winning car. If he can improve his consistency a little bit and become less incident prone, he has the potential to be unstoppable with his natural ability. Last year, he finished 3rd at the British Grand Prix. This year, he finished 2nd. So for 2022, that only means one thing. Anyways, it was great to see him have such strong pace and tyre management, which should bode well going forward. Loser, Sebastian Vettel. For the qualifying session on Friday, Vettel had a pretty decent result, finishing in the top 10. But given his lap wasn't perfect and how close the lap times were, he could have put his car as high up as P6. He made up a couple of places in the sprint qualifying session on Saturday to start P8 for the Grand Prix, behind old foe Fernando Alonso. But when fighting the Spaniard at the restarts, he... don't say it. After that, Seb wasn't able to recover and ended up retiring on lap 41. It could have been so much more considering the pace Aston Martin had throughout the entire weekend, and how his teammates finished P8 after starting 14th. It was a missed opportunity for the German, but hopefully he can come back stronger in Hungary. Winners, Alpine. Fernando Alonso in sprint qualifying made his 2-meter wide car seem like it was 6 meters when anyone tried to make a move. His getaway from the line was amazing to watch and reminiscent of his days at Ferrari. Daniel Ricciardo even said that the Spaniard's racecraft is the best on the grid, given his brilliance in wheel-to-wheel combats. He ended up finishing best of the rest behind the Mercedes, McLarens and Ferraris, which was the best he could have done. Esteban Ocon also had a great weekend, considering how the past few have gone for him. He finished only 4 seconds behind his teammates to complete a double point score for Alpine. Loser, George Russell. Russell once again was phenomenal over 1 lap. On Friday, he put his car 8th on the grid for sprint qualifying, and during that, he collided with Carlos Sainz and unfortunately earned himself a 3-place grid penalty. His luck only got worse on Sunday as he dropped down to P15 on the first lap, and from there, he was unable to recover his way back into the points. There's been a lot of talk about whether he'll replace Valtteri next year, and it was actually rumoured it would be announced this weekend. That didn't end up happening, and crucially, Bottas proved to Mercedes today that he's still very much a team player and a solid number 2 to Hamilton. If Russell wants that seat, he's eventually going to have to convert on these point scoring opportunities. Winners, McLaren. Finishing in the top 5 for Lando Norris has pretty much become a normality at this point. He's been absolutely killing it this year, and is back up to P3 in the Drivers' Championship. His teammate Daniel Ricciardo also had his best result of the season so far, coming home in P5. Hopefully, this will be a turning point for him in his efforts to get on top of the McLaren. Who were your winners and losers from the British Grand Prix? Be sure to let me know down in the comment section below. Remember to leave a like if you enjoyed and subscribe to the channel with bell notifications to keep up to date with the latest storylines from the 2021 season. And as always, I'll see you in the next one.